right now. And I'm going to share my screen. So welcome to our 18th session of the Warwick Zoom garden plot. And today, gosh, I wrote up this agenda and then we got so many pictures and images in. Well, we'd like to start off, especially if people submit questions in advance. This is what comes first. And so we really want this to be centered around beginners and make sure that any beginner gardener feels welcome here and gets their questions answered. And so let's get on to the questions. So the first, and I'm going to stop sharing, and then I think it was Melissa raised this question. Good first time things to grow in a raised bed.
Well, I don't know. You can grow anything in a raised bed. I grow everything in raised beds. So good things to do are things you like to eat. So I would say that that's the simplest way to approach it. Don't grow anything you don't eat and grow a lot of what you eat.
That's true. You can even grow corn in raised beds. Probably the only thing that becomes a problem in raised beds is squash, because they end up taking up so much room in the raised bed.
I give them 2 raised beds.
I
let them run over into the other bed, okay, so they have enough room.
So I grow butternut squash, but I grow it vertically in a raised bed, and I have a tunnel that it grows over. So that's a good way to grow it and save space.
Yeah, because I'm actually, I got a garden plot in Newburgh, because I live near Newburgh. And so, you know, it's a community garden like you all are familiar with. And so I was just sort of thinking, you know, I'm definitely going to be there on weekends, maybe a few times during the week. You know, luckily I'm working from home still, so I could like run over in between meetings and stuff. But I'm just sort of thinking of like simple, basic things, like definitely the stuff to eat for sure. But I was thinking anything else sort of that for first time growers, not too complicated.
Don't put mint in.
Don't.
Sorry. Don't grow mint in your raised bed.
I would do that in a container. Do that separate.
Okay, good. You know that. All right. I just want to throw that in. It'll take over. You won't be able to kill it.
There's a very thorough list they gave me as to what I cannot grow, so I got it.
No one.
So Melissa, how large is your plot?
I was going to ask that.
40 by 8.
Wow.
40?
Yeah.
That's a good size.
Yeah, no, it is a really nice size. Yeah.
I would suggest you first think about the things you like to eat the most and make that list and maybe look through some catalogs so you get an idea of the space requirements.
Okay, yeah.
And you can, these things.
Oh, sorry, you said 40 feet? No.
Yeah, she said 40 feet.
I'm sorry, it's 4 by 8.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's. I knew that wasn't right. I was like, that's that's like a farm.
Massive.
I knew something was wrong.
It's been a long Zoom meeting day for me, so I'm
no, don't worry.
Look up something called square foot gardening.
Okay, I think I said that one time before.
Yeah, there's the book by Mel, and his last name begins with a B. I can't think of it, but that's how I started.
Bartholomew. That's it.
Yeah.
Bartholomew. Square foot gardening.
Right, because if that book explains how to lay out a small plot in the 1 foot segments, and they explain how to plant with the sun, and gives you an idea of how many plants you could put in. But I would say, for example, forget corn. Don't grow corn, don't grow potatoes.
Oh yeah.
Don't grow winter squash. I mean, tomatoes are an absolute must in everyone's life as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
But when you're growing tomatoes, you can get plants that will produce a large quantity of fruit. Like the big beefsteaks, you don't get as many tomatoes from, but you can get ones that have a medium size, like a little bigger than a golf ball, and they're very prolific producing. So a couple of those plants will give you a lot of tomatoes.
Right. I mean, don't put too, and you have to remember how things are going to be when they're full size. Because, if you're going to be like all depressed and early in the season, like, oh, nothing's here. And then you're going to lose your patience and plant more. And then the next thing you know, in like end of July, you're going to have 17, everything towering up.
Right.
So pay attention what's not, not to shade out or overtake the bed.
Yeah, that's what they'll explain, and all this stuff is online now too, obviously. But they'll explain to you to look at the arc of the sun, and you put your tall plants to the back, so that they're not blocking the sun from your lower plants. And there's other plants that can take more shade, like lettuces.
Mhm.
So it's a learning experience. But I mean, there's things that will actually grow. Beans. Has anyone not ever been able to get a bean to grow?
Me, I have terrible luck.
Oh.
Pole
I'm sure we'll be
beans
talking
would
more
be
about all
really,
the plants as we go on.
yeah, pole beans would be good in that. You put a
Right.
fence in the back of the thing on the north side, and they
Right.
grow tall. They're very prolific. They go to frost, and they produce a lot.
Mhm.
If they're in the back, they're not going to shade anything.
Right.
Good advice. I will get the book for sure.
And the beans will also put nitrate in the soil, so you'll have the benefit of crops feeding your crops. I loved Sarah's suggestion of grow what you eat. And
Mhm.
everybody, make sure you give away your extra to your neighbors and your family and your friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Yeah, Newburgh actually has a shed where if you have extra, you could put it in there for the other families and
Right.
stuff. So
Nice.
One of the people on Chad's Grow Local Greenwood Lake call talked about having a plot in the Greenwood Lake Community Garden, and they were growing nice broccoli, and the people next to them were not maintaining the garden, and all the bugs from their broccoli were getting on the other people's broccoli was getting on theirs. So what are things that we think, that really might be a problem, like in that regard, to grow in a community garden?
Brassicas. Brassicas are hard. Brassicas bring in bugs and predators. So brassicas are tricky. I would avoid brassicas.
Well, they have their own like little favorite bugs that follow them, and they're very prolific. The other challenge is how often you're going to be there.
Yeah.
The plants, things start off kind of small, and then it really ramps up around here, say the end of June, the beginning of July. Things start really growing, and sometimes the bugs start growing too. So that's where, if you're not checking out what's going on, you could lose things to bugs. I mean, bugs are a whole nother topic.
But aren't there some, even if you are vigilant about keeping bugs off your plants, if you're in a community garden and the person next to you isn't vigilant about theirs, you're sunk. But there are other things like beans where that's not going to be a problem.
Well, the potato, the June bug, what do you call those things? Those horrible bugs that get on the roses. They get on them.
Japanese beetles?
Japanese beetles, yeah, they're tough.
Yeah.
Excuse me, someone has some background noise going on. If everyone could mute themselves, if you're not speaking, that would be great.
I got a job. I'm moving out.
Okay, I find that peppers are really good in terms of having very few bug problems.
True. Peppers.
Yeah, and they produce, once they start, they produce almost till
Right.
frost.
Right.
So they're a good crop, and they produce a lot.
Tomatoes really don't have bug problems. They can just be fussy about water, but there's not that many bugs that get on the tomatoes. It's really more the critters. There are.
Probably the worst thing with tomatoes is blight.
Well, yeah, that's the plant.
The hornworms later on in the season for the tomatoes, but that's later on once they're bigger.
Well, you get early blight or late blight.
I find with the brassicas, I'm sorry, in the garden, for me, broccoli isn't necessarily worth it. It's more of a fun crop to grow than it is a crop that's going to feed my family. And I found that even when I first started and had my square foot garden, that you're not getting that much from it. And you're just constantly fighting like those cabbage worms, right? And the little white butterflies that are flying around just looking to
Turn
plant
into
their babies
cabbage
in there.
worms.
Terrible, those evil little critters. So I would say definitely plant things that are more prolific. You know, you're going to want to plant things that you're going to be able to eat and enjoy. Like the broccoli, yes, you can cut and get that first crown and then you'll get the side shoots. But the peppers and the tomatoes, that'll certainly give you, and the beans, you'll be able to feed off of that greater than you would something like a brassica in the one shot.
I feel like if you're going to go with a brassica, you need to go with a radish, because radishes are so very easy to grow and you get a pretty good return. Is that like the amount of seeds you put in the ground is how many radishes generally you're going to get up. And at the very least, every part of the radish is edible. So you can eat the tops if you don't eat the bottom.
Plus they grow very fast.
And you can start them really early. So a lot of stuff you have to wait till after frost to put it in, but radish seeds, you can, what the heck, you can get them started early. Maybe if they're in the way, just even dig them up and plant what you really want there. But maybe you'll get some radishes before.
Yes, I would start with radish. Definitely start with radishes.
I would definitely put in a zucchini plant. I happen to like zucchini. If you don't, but zucchini are very prolific. They do take up room. There are some that are being cultivated now they're a little bit smaller than the giant ones that you need an acre to, not really an acre to grow. Those, you have to watch for squash bugs on those.
Vine borer. The vine borer.
Yeah, well, there's two things. There's the squash bug and the vine borer. And then if you look,
also got the
do you like Swiss chard? Swiss chard you can keep growing all summer. Swiss chard is a great crop and it's tough. Arugula you can put in 3 times. Lettuce you can put in 3 times.
Right, so yeah, so Melissa, so keep that, right, also timing when you put things in as well as what you grow. So radishes are really early, and snap peas you can put in early, and a lot of greens, you can do that as soon as weather permits, and then hopefully you get, multiple harvests. That's the key.
So theoretically, you're going to start planting your greens and your cold tolerance, like peas, like snow peas and chill weather stuff in March through, May. And then when you're going to put in your tomatoes and stuff, you just take out all of your greens and your early spring stuff. That makes sense, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't take out all my greens. Some of them bolt. The spinach has to go, but I keep Swiss chard, the same plants, going all summer because I put a row cover over them. And you can keep kale going all summer.
Now, if you want a spinach type that goes all during the heat season, there is New Zealand spinach, which is actually in New Zealand, is a ground cover that they use. And the New Zealand spinach is, the leaves are thicker, smaller, but it tastes just like spinach. And some of the seed catalogs carry the seeds. They look similar to Swiss chard seeds, but a little bit bigger. And it's very, very heat tolerant.
I may have to get 2 plots now. No, just kidding. I'm just gonna do
yeah,
one.
I guess, but sorry, Michael, your original point, well, I guess if someone grows something that gets critters, I don't know, and I guess you need someone to really on top of it, who's running the community garden.
Yeah, no, there's someone there. There's 2 people there every day. So there's someone from Cornell Cooperative, and then the person running the
yeah, as long as you stay on top of it, as long as you don't have 5 beds, where no one shows up for 3 weeks and everything's going crazy, then
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
What about
Melissa,
water?
what
Where are you
garden
getting
is it?
water from?
Oh, so they have a rain barrel, and then they also have hoses.
Okay.
Yeah.
When it gets
Melissa,
hot
what
out,
garden is this?
It's the Newburgh, at the Newburgh
Oh,
Armory.
the community garden there behind the armory?
Yes.
I've worked there along with Peter. We've both worked there several times.
Yeah, it's a great little spot.
Yeah.
Melissa,
Except for the groundhogs.
hey guys, Melissa, are you familiar with succession planting? I just wanted to, I don't know if you were talking about it. I had to step away. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you're familiar with succession planting. When I was first starting out with my raised beds, well, any kind of gardening really, you know, I wasn't always on top of sowing that extra row of lettuce or extra few squares in this case, if you're doing so that was helpful for me.
Yeah,
really be on top of it. And you can keep going, you know, and change over to your fall lettuces and winter lettuces. I'm harvesting fresh salads right now. So it's so wonderful. And then I had a question for the group, if you don't mind. Does anybody have bottom rot or know how to deal with bottom rot in your tomatoes? I know it's early to be thinking of tomatoes.
It's an iron deficiency, isn't it? So you want to put calcium in your soil.
Okay.
Calcium, I believe.
Yeah, it's a calcium deficiency. So is it a container or is it in the ground?
It was in a container on our back deck.
The water is running through your soil and washing away the nutrients, which leaves the roots susceptible to rot. So you're going to want to either double stack up on your nutrients by putting like crushed eggshells in the bottom or like something like that that retains calcium actually in the soil itself, or replenish it with nutrients on a regular basis on top of that, knowing that when you water, you may be rinsing nutrients away.
What type of container are they in?
They're in these cedar boxes up on feet.
1 foot by 4.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 foot by 4 foot long boxes.
Well, people try to grow them in terracotta, and they've got to understand that the terracotta just dries out tremendously. It soaks all the water up out of the when you water the plant, and doesn't give it back to the plant. It just soaks it up, goes to the outside, and then it evaporates. So the plants tend to dry out very, very quickly.
Also could be uneven watering. So like if it, like he just described it, the roots get really dry and then they get a lot of water. That can cause the issue too. But my suggestion would be go dig into that bed and put in a layer of crushed eggshells and other things that like are calcium boosters, and just amend your soil from the bottom up of that container.
I think you're onto something where you said that the nutrients are washing out because we had a lot of rain and we had, you know, obviously the watering, the fact that it's raised up on feet. So it's perhaps just running out.
Well, and like she said, it takes all the nutrients and just washes it right out of the soil.
Yeah. Thank you.
I found that some tomatoes seem to be more susceptible than others too. We tend to grow a number of varieties, and some will get blossom end rot and others won't. So it's, do you replace your soil every year or part of it?
Yes, yes. Are heirlooms more susceptible? Because we love to grow heirlooms, and then, you know, I have found that to be the case with them. Maybe it's just us, I don't know.
I never figured it out. It's some, you know.
I have heard from garden centers, when I ask them about heirloom seeds versus genetically modified or boosted seeds, they say that the heirlooms are more susceptible to rot, blight, things like that, just because they don't have the built-in boosters of some of these more modified seeds.
Right.
That's correct.
That makes sense.
If you'll notice, typically they put a set of letters either on the seed packet or in the description in the catalog. I believe VN and L shows what they're resistant to in the different typical things that hit the heirlooms.
I mean, I do save my eggshells all winter religiously. I pulverize them. And when we planted tomatoes, I grew up with doing the hills. So we dig a hole, I put some compost down in the hole, I put eggshells down in the hole, and then you plant your tomatoes deep. And just blossom and rot, but I'd say it's a rainy year, that's, all bets are off. But last year we had a good tomato crop and there wasn't that much blossom and rot.
I love
depending where you were in Orange County, it was either a good pepper season or it was a good tomato season. They didn't, even though they're cousins, they didn't work out together. Talking to a lot of the vendors at the farmers markets, they had either one or the other. Now, one thing you can do with tomato and also with pepper plants, if you're when you transplant into the ground, put either a teaspoon or a tablespoon of Epsom salt into the hole and then free sprinkle around the plants afterwards. The Epsom salt, which is magnesium sulfate, is totally natural. It's organic, and it helps free up the pent-up calcium that is in the soil but can't release because of the imbalance of the chemicals in the soil.
I have heard this. I have heard what Jim is talking about. That is something that I have definitely heard of. I've also heard pouring milk onto the plant, but I would not recommend that personally.
No, nothing on the leaves.
I spray my tomatoes and my peppers with Epsom salts. You know, I put it into a light solution into a pump sprayer.
Yeah.
And after they're, up maybe 6-7 inches and they seem to be not growing as fast as I want, I give them a shot of that at like maybe once a month, and they really perk up.
We did a test at one of the school gardens that I have of raised beds right next to each other. One bed with Epsom salt usage and the other one without. And there was about a foot difference in the plants.
Mm-hmm.
And it, it's cheap, it's organic. When you think need some more, you just take a handful and throw it in the bed. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to till it in. You don't have to work it in, because as soon as the water hits it, it dissolves and goes directly into the soil. Now, I will spray my pepper plants with the solution that you're talking about, Sarah, but I don't put anything on my tomatoes because the leaves don't absorb in the tomatoes water, and depending on when you spray it, you could set yourself up for fungi to have problems on your tomatoes.
I want to throw in a question. What is an F1 hybrid? I was reading in my seed catalog and I see, some are marked as F1 hybrids. What is that?
Hybrid means that they have been raised to resist either disease or bugs. Now, that kind of flows into the topic of genetically modified. Plants have been doing genetic modification since day one. Look at corn. It took over 5,000 years. It doesn't look anything like it originally looked like. And that was by nature's genetic modification. So when we have that discussion on GMO, hybrid just means that it could be an heirloom that they crossed with another plant that had better growth characteristics. Can't talk tonight.
That's it. That's it exactly. That is it exactly. It's beneficial characteristics that are bred into a plant with selective breeding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can do the same thing even with your squash by taking one squash plant that has better characteristics with another and just force pollinating them.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, right. We'll have a discussion later, but genetically modifying stuff is not the same as what nature does.
Well, this is cross-pollinating.
Well, actually it is.
No,
actually, it is.
I disagree with that.
So wait.
And
So
we'll have to take it to Cornell, Chad.
Well, no, Chad. So my question to you, Chad, is you're saying that this cross-pollination technique is considered, you're considering that the same level as other genetically modified stuff?
No. No, there's a difference between cross-pollination and entering a new foreign agent into a existing genetic makeup of a plant. And even to inject that into the plant, it won't go in naturally. You have to have some type of extra, I guess, something to let it enter into the gene pool. And then, why, right, like Jim said earlier, you would spray so then they could be more resistant to Roundup, which is that's not really something you want, to be more resistant to a poison. That's like I guess it's, you know, it's somewhat useful, but the point that you're spraying it with Monsanto in the first place is problematic.
Well,
Folks, I'm sorry.
Yeah, all right, we'll get, this could be a long discussion.
For another
My-
night. Maybe we can take it
My
to that ground.
understanding, real quick, Michael, my understanding of an F1 hybrid is that it's a first generation hybrid of two parents that cross-pollinated and came together. So when you're buying an F1 hybrid, they can't guarantee you, I mean, you never get the guarantee, but the size, the shape, the production of that plant, because it's first gen, it's too new. They can't tell
and they
you.
can never guarantee if you take seeds from a hybrid and use them the next year, what you will have, because you never know which side of the true plant it will go back to.
Right. Honestly, it happened to me from 2 years ago. I saved seeds from one of my tomato plants, and only from one tomato I saved them from. And I planted 4 of these plants in my garden this year. 2 of them were identical to the parent from the year before, and then 2 of them were like Frankensteins. And I have no idea what the hell happened, but it's an F1 hybrid because I saved them and they were too close together that they were getting cross-pollinated. And unless you're like taking one of those little jewelry bags or a little mesh bag over a flower as soon as it's coming up and self-pollinating and then saving from that particular plant, you're gonna cross-pollinate in your own garden if the things are too close together. So basically an F1 hybrid, they can't, there's no real guarantees in life with growing and stuff, but it's a first generation that you're buying from 2 plants that have been crossed.
We had a set of tomato plants with yellow striping in them, but nothing in the garden had yellow stripes on any other tomato that we planted. We don't know where it came from, so we assume that a hybrid went back to true and then crossed over again to another plant. So you never know what those bees, what they pick up when they're running around the neighborhood.
It's like a pollen STD.
I have a question here. I'm not sure if this picture is clear. So this raised bed is the first year we used the cement blocks for that. And one of the things that was really good about this is in these holes on the side, you can grow stuff.
Yes.
Like a chard will grow in there, carrots will grow in there. Those are really nice for growing different things. But you see, I have a deer fence in the back here, and that's about 6 feet tall. But over the bed, I think something happened and part of the fence got damaged by something. And so I had this little piece of fence and it sort of makes a big hoop there. And my question is, could I be using that like for a row cover, basically covering the whole bed and put row cover over that fence? Would that be easy to manipulate for row cover? Or for row cover users, what is your verdict on this question?
The more stable your frame is, the better.
So it's pretty stable, huh?
Are you using the row cover for too much sun, winter protection, spring protection? What do you want the row cover for?
You're probably for cold protection early and late.
Okay. I mean, my only concern with that is your row cover needs to be able, you need to be able to open it. I mean, we use hoops and then put the row cover on, attach them with these clips. And then you can unclip a side and get in and harvest if you want. So, I mean, that would be fine if you're not going to need to get in there, but you know, with that type of wire mesh, would the whole thing lift off?
I'm thinking I would sort of, maybe I would put a board along one side so I could just lift up the whole side. The whole thing would come up.
Yeah, if you can lift it up, I mean, why not?
Okay.
Plus during pollination season, you're going to want that row cover off to allow the bees and insects to get in there.
Okay.
Depending on how thick the mesh is on the row cover.
I think he's just using it for extending the season, not to have
That's
it up
fine.
in the summer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I have found you got to make sure that it's nailed down good or it blow away. Just make sure that it's secure on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forgot that part.
You know, I think that the cinder blocks there really lend themselves nicely to being able to access the earth in general. So if you were to just take some pieces of like rebar or something that you can drive into the earth, in through the blocks, that you could get like the PVC tubing to arch over and make yourself a row cover really easily and fairly inexpensive.
Love this idea. Great idea. Great idea, Nicole.
Oh, I thank you, Miss Sarah.
Here's another question, and this has I have a lot of reasons for asking this question. So I'm sorry, the picture just isn't that good. In the back, there's a deer fence. You can see the posts, but here there's this cylinder thing that I'm talking about. Okay. So the deer fence is 6 foot, but this cylinder is just 4 foot. And on an earlier Zoom garden plot, I talked about the way I did potatoes. That
Right.
this is a basic idea for composting from Rodale's Encyclopedia of Organic Gardening. You take a piece of welded wire fence and just make a cylinder like this and put stuff in it. So I gathered a bunch of leaves in there, and then I got the idea, wait a minute, I could be growing potatoes in here while I'm waiting for that stuff to finish growing. Okay, and then I noticed that after I was done that year, that the ground below it was composted really nicely so that I could start growing new things there. So I've started telling people that this is a threefer, which gets people really excited, but let me just emphasize my diction there. It's a threefer. You get 3 things out of it. It's not a reefer, a threefer. I want everyone to be clear about that.
Well, then why don't you grow some pot in there and then you'll have a reefer.
Yeah. New York's becoming a refuse state. Cuomo announced it today.
Okay, so let's imagine like somebody, they're home extra now because, pandemic, but once the growing season gets going, they're not going to be home that much. So they want, and also it protects from deer. So you have somebody who wants to spend some time planting early, then once a week they're going to water, or maybe twice a week, and then at the end of the season they want to harvest. Okay, or let's imagine like for Chad's new community garden, they've got a big space. The first year they're going to focus on certain areas to get stuff done, but they'll have other areas where they're not going to be able to pull a lot of attention. They could put something up like this. What are the different things that you could grow in a planter like this? What would you recommend besides potatoes?
Squash.
Winter squash are a long season.
We had my compost at one of the schools. Somebody had thrown in a pumpkin. We had pumpkins growing at humongous pumpkin plants that were growing out of the compost pile.
Right. There's one footnote to this. If that cage is inside a deer fenced area, you're fine. But if you put a cage like that out in a non-protected area, the deer love squash plants. So you will have all the blossoms and everything around the edge eaten off because you know how they explode out. But no, I mean, winter squash, it's what, like 100 some odd days to get a winter squash. So that would be perfect. Maybe put a little trellis for them.
And just think, all you have to do is pull it up and lay it back down at the end of season because you've already got it in your compost pile.
I wasn't thinking necessarily to do this with a compost. Let's say you have just a new piece of garden. Well, that's another question. So like imagine like we're in Chad's new community garden. It's been a lawn that's been mowed by the village for several years now. I don't know how many years. You're going to dig it up. You might want to do something to prepare the ground. I guess that would be a question. But then you're going to mulch it nicely and plant something there. And then if you water it all year, I mean, at the end of the year, that's going to be nice soil underneath it. But so I guess one of the questions is how, if you went to a new piece of ground that wasn't used for garden before, how would you prepare it?
Lasagna. I would lasagna it. I'm gonna do this later this year. We're gonna see how it's gonna go. But I'm going to lay down cardboard, gonna put
Yeah.
down some straw, gonna put down some dirt, gonna put down some cardboard, gonna put down some dirt, gonna put down some straw, compost, 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 and plant into it.
Yeah, you do, and you do your proportions 3 to 1, three browns to every green, and in your lasagna, and you'll have perfect compost and really good soil.
Just make sure that cardboard's wet, Sarah, when you go to put it down.
Hey,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
wet, right? Like what? Like really?
Yeah, I don't know how much cardboard went into Newburgh.
This is a lot of grass.
There's a huge rainstorm coming, and then put your cardboard down. I use cardboard in my paths at home. So when there's like 3 days of rain coming, I get my Amazon boxes and open them up and plop them out there.
I'm going on top of grass. I'm going through a layer of very thick, dense grass. So it's
You
going
gotta
to
weed whack it down really close first.
all right. So you think I should get it right down to the very bare minimum?
Within a couple of days with cardboard on it, that grass is going to start dying, and it's going to
My green in my
it's going to
lasagna.
start rotting. I mean,
Okay,
that's what happened in Newburgh. We had weeds in Newburgh.
It's going to start becoming my nitrogen.
Yep. In fact, you'll probably have to add a lot of browns to start in the first portion of the lasagna, or you're going to have a lot of ammonia built up when that grass rots.
Sarah, I know
agree.
it's
I think-
preferable. Like, what is it? I mean, if you couldn't get the grass cut and you still laid the cardboard, would that mess it up? Or that would, I mean, and if you
No.
really smothered the grass,
The
but
cardboard,
you
the
couldn't get a
cardboard
lawnmower or
will
something.
be part of your browns that you're actually adding to the compost pile.
They used to have enough weight on top of it. I tend to put this stuff in areas that they're not areas I use. So I'll lay the cardboard down to suppress the weeds, but I may not, I'm not gardening there, and I'm not spending a lot of time laying a lot of extra things on top. But what I found was, unless there's the weight to keep the light out of the weeds, they're still active underneath there. They really don't like to give up. That's the only reason I'm suggesting,
No, I'll
doing-
do that. I'll do that if I could, but I'm not sure I can get a big lawnmower.
no, but if you're gonna layer it up, then it's just
Yeah,
keeping
okay.
the light out.
I mean,
From what
Chad, the way you discussed building your mounds, you put the cardboard down, then you're going to be putting things on top of it. So
Right,
it's,
right,
that
okay.
grass is going to die out quick.
Okay.
And then it'll be smothered by the other things that you put on
Right.
top of it as you're building your layering of your mound lasagna, basically.
Thank you. Well, I do want to mention, wait, that now is probably a good time to prune as well, right, guys? I guess if you wanted to really prune, wouldn't this be the ideal time to prune trees or bushes or anything you had that was?
Well,
No,
it all depends on what it is. Some plants like to be pruned in the fall. Some plants don't care about wintertime being pruned. Some plants, like a butterfly bush, if you prune it now, you may end up killing it because the reeds will allow the cold to get down closer to the ball of the plant and basically freeze it. So we typically leave like butterfly plants. Now you can take any of the grasses, the ornamental grasses, you can cut them back, but don't get too close to the crown. They still need some insulation on that crown.
Or like, apple trees, peach trees, rose
apple
bushes,
trees,
I think would be now.
Most fruit trees are done typically in October, November, right after the pickings, the last of the pickings, and when they start to go dormant. And then they take about 30% of the tree off. So it's very selective how they do it. I mean, if you go up in Modena, right after the apples have all been picked, when they start pruning those trees, you would think that they're going to kill every last one of them because they look like sticks. And those trees are probably 20, 30 years old, some of them.
Mhm.
But it's amazing how much they take off of a tree. But you kind of need to look at the pruning books to decide whether that particular plant, or look up the characteristics of the plant when pruning is best. Flowering plants and shrubs, you want to do it. You don't want to do any pruning while they're flowering. You want to wait until their flowering is over.
Thank you. And I remember when I was at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, I couldn't believe, I was so frightened. Like they would really prune things sometimes down to the ground. And it came back stronger than ever. But when you see it happen, you're like, no, stop.
Well, actually, the way that they prune pampas grass in Texas is they set it on fire.
Oh, wow, that'll do it.
They wait until wintertime when it's dead, and then it goes up in a big flame, and the crown basically loves the soil, the potash of the soil that's, I mean, not the soil, the plant that's been burnt.
Okay, sorry, Michael, next picture.
So folks, we've got some pictures to share this week, and we're getting, you know, a little bit onto our thing. So Melissa, do you want to tell us about what's going on in your backyard?
Melissa.
Michelle, you mean Michelle?
Yeah,
Oh, is
because
this-
what's going on in my backyard?
I think it's
I'm
Michelle,
sorry.
maybe.
I'm sorry, Michelle, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That's right. Michelle's turn.
Melissa's like, oh, I'll take it.
My mistake. My bad.
Okay, so that's our hoop, one hoop bed. There's a second one to the left of it, and Rick is the handyman behind that. He saw a video on YouTube where the guy made it with the PVC pipes and the clips.
You can double it.
And you can double it by putting a second layer over. We didn't go that far, but that cover is actually on a removable hinge. So we can take it off in the summer and store it in our shed. And then in the colder months, it can get slotted back in. It's got a handle in the front now, so you can lift it up, a handle on top and bottom. And we secure it with bungee cords so it doesn't blow up. It's it was quite a production to build, but we're very happy with it. And it's, yeah, and apparently you gain half a zone when you do that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's gorgeous. You should be very proud. I'm extremely jealous.
He is very proud of himself.
It's a piece of work. It really is.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Yeah, thank you. And then to the right, same handyman put together that bed and the greenhouse. Unfortunately, you know, I grew very bold. The first year I had stuff under row covers. I started them early enough, so we had lots of greens and salads throughout the winter. This time around, I was a little slack, so I planted the two under the hoops outside, those two beds, and they're jam full of veggies. And then the one on the right, the picture on the right is inside the greenhouse, and it's unheated, but I just was really, you know, too late. So all those tiny seedlings are still pretty much that size. They're in arrested development, so to speak, and they're hanging out until it gets lighter. And then at some point, I think they'll start growing, but I've got mustard, mache, kale, what's some other things in there? I forget now. Chard. Yeah. I grew some wasabina arugula, which tastes just like wasabi. So we have a really nice selection of big things to choose from under the hoops, but inside the greenhouse, yeah, it's a bit sad.
I think it's gorgeous and
Not
beautiful.
only that, but
It all looks great.
you've got stuff that'll cure a runny nose too.
Right. That's right.
Not to be nosy, but I can see the garden in the background, a picture too. Whose garden is that? Oh, are we going there next? My bad. I'm getting ahead.
No, that was somebody else.
Oh,
Yeah,
you mean
what's-
behind
what
the
else?
fence?
Yeah, what's going on with the stonework ground, and it looks like a fence on the right?
So this is all our garden. Our vegetable garden has how tall is the fence?
7 foot,
7-foot fence around it. And how big is it?
24 by 24.
I should know this, 24 by 24. We've got I should have sent you a picture of the whole thing. There's a lot going on in there, but beyond the fence is the woods. We're on 8 acres, and that behind Rick, there is some extra stonework. You might just see the corners of it. That's a pond we just put in.
Oh my God, so wonderful. Where are you? Where are you located?
I'm in Campbell Hall.
Stay
So
with that.
not a lot of people know where that is. It's very close to Chester. We're literally right off of 94.
Mhm.
We have a lot of-
Beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Thank Thank you so much. We
We have a
love
lot of
it.
deer.
We have a lot of deer. Actually, we're so greedy when it comes to growing things. We actually have another 10-foot bed made with a lasagna gardening method outside of this fenced garden that we're growing gooseberry bushes and garlic in. And I'm hoping that the deer will not browse too much. We're crossing our fingers.
They'll leave your garlic alone, that's for sure. They don't like the smell of it.
Yeah, I just don't know about the gooseberries.
I
You know?
would-
I have
well.
gooseberries and the deer don't touch them.
Oh,
And
good.
there's no fence.
Good.
You could always use a liquid fence.
It doesn't
Oh,
work.
it does not work. They use it as salad
It should say
dressing.
salad dressing.
If
The
you,
gooseberries are so prickly.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
got a gooseberry plant outside of my deer fence, and it's got that 4-foot fencing around it.
Okay.
So you could just, with that much protection, you can protect it from deer.
That's a
Although
good
it does
idea.
sort of grow up against the fence, and anything outside does get nibbled. But the stuff inside, within a cylinder of fencing does fine.
Good to know. Thank you.
Here they eat everything.
Hmm.
Unfortunately.
We have more images to share, folks, tonight. So this is Bill. Bill Makovsky, it's your turn.
Oh, okay. This is a 16 by 18 unheated greenhouse in the middle of my garden. And there's a few cold frames sitting in front of it. And I use this greenhouse 12 months a year. In the winter, I get greens out of it. And the picture on the right shows, took this yesterday. I have row covers over the hoops, and I have jugs of water inside, and they're covered at night. And I open them up if it's really sunny. And I also open them up to harvest. So there's 3 beds in the greenhouse. And the way I work it is in the fall, I put in full-grown kale, collards, and chard for about 1.5 of the space, or I'm sorry, for half the space. And then I harvest that in November, December, and January. And right now, a lot of the chard has been picked already. A lot of all of the kale, and there's still some growing, but a lot of it is used up. And then at the same time, I plant spinach and lettuce and radishes and escarole and other things that are fairly small in the other half of the greenhouse. And right now, some of that you can see is getting pretty big. I've been harvesting lettuce and spinach for a while. And that stuff grows well, and you just keep cutting it, and it keeps growing, and you get a lot starting February. That's when the sun finally comes back and it gets warmer. And by then, a lot of the early plants are pretty depleted, but as they get depleted and cut, I plant new plants in between them. So over on the left side, there's a whole bunch of collards and stuff, but in between, there's lettuce and Chinese cabbage and a whole bunch of other things. It's hard to see it from this angle, but it's very hard to get a picture of the greenhouse from, to get a full sense of what's in there. So anyway, this works. The plants are happy. They never they grow all the time, even the little ones from the fall. And I think the combination of the row cover and the jugs work really well. And you can get greens from this from November right through until May. And at the end of April is when I clean out the greenhouse, and then I put summer crops in. So I get early summer crops, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, things like that. So they come earlier. And then the greenhouse extends them into November. And then I switch over again. I get all greens into the greenhouse. So anyway, that's the way I work it. I've done it for about 5 years. And it's handled temperatures down to -20. We've had that.
Can you elaborate more on the water jugs? I don't know if I'm quite getting it.
Water jugs. I see, I'm a physicist, so water is miraculous to me. Okay, it has the highest specific heat of any substance, which means it holds a lot of heat. So when the sun is out during the day and it warms up in there, and it does get warm, the water gets warm. And then at night, as it gets cold in there, the water releases the heat. And so it keeps the plants warmer than they would be. It's sort of like the ocean, how the ocean affects the continents. If you live next to the coast, right, you have a moderated temperature change. If you live in the middle of the country, the temperature extremes are much greater. So that's what it's in there for. I have about 15 or 20 jugs in each bed.
That's an Elliott Coleman technique, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he uses jugs, but the greenhouse is from Elliott Coleman. I mean, he has a video on how to make it, and that's how I did it. I went to Home Depot, bought the pipes, and bought the plastic from him, from Johnny's actually, and then I just put it together. And
It's beautiful. It's amazing. Is it okay if I still come visit you and see it in person?
sure. Don't come when after it snows, because then it's a lot of ice going down to the garden and it's hilly. So it has to be without snow.
It looks so good.
Well, the
I'd
nice
love to
thing
check it
about
out,
it is
too.
those water jugs are releasing their heat right into the coldest area that there is, because the cold air sinks to the bottom. So that's good that you're kind of equalizing it with the temperature from the jugs.
Yeah, no, I think it works just fine. I've done it I've done it for about 25 years. But if you cover I also bought better, I had summer coverings for a few years, but I got a winter covering this year. I spent $30, and that makes a big difference. Instead of having 1 or 2 covers or 3 covers sometimes, I just have 1 cover this year. It makes it much easier to open it up and close it.
So with the solar batteries, does it make a difference if you paint the bottle or not? Like if I painted all those black, would they acquire more heat than if I didn't paint them black?
They would probably be a little bit better. Yeah.
So cool.
I mean, you could also use black 5-gallon buckets full of water.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of put these in between the plants and I try not to use up too much space. So
Right.
I don't want 5-gallon buckets seem to me pretty big, and I
Yeah.
don't want to take up too much space. But these slip in between the plants, and I have some single quart buckets, and then I have some 1/2 gallons and so forth. So I slip them in where they fit best.
I've seen techniques where people use the buckets to form a wall, and then you have the southward facing window lets in the light that hits the wall of solar batteries and basically charges the entire area.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I saw one time where they did, like you said, a wall of black buckets on both sides. And basically what they did was they made a raised bed out of the black buckets and then filled them with water in the wintertime. And then let them charge up, like you say, with the temperature during the day. And then at night, they radiated their heat back into the soil.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of doing the minimal amount. So in this case,
I love this technique. I think this technique
it works, and it's really easy in the winter. You don't have to do a lot of work. It's easy to maintain.
Right.
You go out and you pick, basically, in the winter.
We're getting close to the end. We're going to run a few minutes over, folks. We try to finish in an hour, but we're going to run a little bit over. I'm going to quickly go through these pictures that were shared by Christy Irfer, who was given this plant assistant for Christmas. I don't think Christy is here with us this evening, so she's not going to tell us all that's going on here. But I think her sister has one of these or something, and basically has like 6 healthy greens that are just growing and very conveniently done inside without having to go out in the cold and so forth.
This is adorable. So I wish she was here so I could ask her many questions. I have started growing microgreens because I'm desperate to grow stuff and it's the winter. So I'm growing microgreens with like a Kmart light and, basically a 10 by 20 tray. So I love this little instant little setups. I want to know how effective they really are. And depending on what model you get, they get really expensive. So, but I love the idea of being able to grow year round indoors.
Can I tell you, I have 2 of these. I've used them in the past, and they have sales frequently. The company's called Aero Garden.
Is it worth it? Do you like it? Does it work?
Yeah, it works great.
Like, what's the yield you're getting out of this?
Well, they grow really fast. The lights are on a timer, and then you know, you can just keep picking and harvesting. They also have a model called a farm, which is like my life's goal to get, that you can grow like a full-size tomato plant and all kinds of huge tall vegetables. These are, you know, these are like the starter models here that they're showing.
Is this the Aero Garden you were talking about? There,
Yes.
Wilson?
They send me emails every day. They're always having sales. You can also, they come with it. You can get an answer. They don't come with it where you can start seedlings in it and you can grow a lot more because you're just growing little seedlings. And it's a good way to get a start on the spring.
You definitely would have to harden them off for sure. But yeah, that would be a great use for starters.
Yeah, it does. It sounds kind of like an aquarium because there's a pump in it. So, you know, if you're comfortable with that kind of aquarium pump noise, then it'll be fine.
This is Jim Hall. I have a question for the group. Hyperponic versus soil grown plants.
I've only grown in soil.
Do you like them or not?
I'm a soil guy. I'm personally a soil guy.
Soil, cocoa
Yeah.
core.
So am I. I was just wondering. I mean, I've had
Yeah.
hydroponic tomatoes, and to me, they're just like store tomatoes. And was
Yeah, I mean, I
wondering if-
understand some people are very limited and, you know, extenuating circumstances, but I really believe, you know, in the whole regenerative, you know, cycle of growing everything in the earth and doing stuff that way.
Peter Lai here recently shared an article with me that mentioned he came across a place where basically he was visiting a slum in another country and they were growing hydroponic plants. And it seemed like, wow, that was a lot better than, it seemed like a good thing under the circumstance.
It's an excellent idea as far as growing mass production without using soil methods. If you're doing it in mass production, they use fish feces as a fertilizer. So the fish live in the tank where the plants are growing, and they basically have a symbiotic relationship. And it does work, but I feel like you are either one or the other.
Right.
Right. That's more like an
I agree.
that's like an aquaponics, is a hydroponic, you know, right, they have people that use the thing right with the whole fish system. And right, again, that's better than, you know, that's very productive in a small space or doing what you can.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know that they grow some at the Newburgh Armory and that closed loop system, but because they have fish in the tanks and everything else. And it's a nice setup, but it's just that the vegetables that tend to grow like that, I feel, don't have the taste that soil grown.
Right, you can't get all the, you know, right, you know, Will Allen does that a lot in Growing Power.
I think that, yeah, that would make
Milwaukee.
sense. They wouldn't quite taste the same. Also, Frank in the comments has mentioned that he has a colleague that has a hydroponic setup and it's got minimal noise. And they complained about the type of plant that came with it. It was a mint plant. It wasn't very tasty for their hydroponic setup.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
I like to grow outside. If I couldn't go outside, I don't think I would even garden. I want to be outside as much as possible. So
I agree. I agree. And
more
plus the
efficiently.
microbes that you get onto your hands and get into your system through your skin.
And you don't have such interesting things inside. I mean, you have lots of interesting insects and all kinds of things outside. So it's more fun.
Oh, yeah.
More of a challenge. You like the challenge.
Well, folks, we have some concluding announcements. I guess if anyone has any final comments or questions they want to ask, we can still squeeze them in. For next month, we'll be meeting on Monday, February 8th. It's the second Monday of the month, just like today is the second Monday of the month. At that meeting, we'll also discuss how frequently we want to meet during March. We're figuring March people will start getting back outdoors, but they won't be fully outdoors. So maybe more questions and things to be going over. So possibly 2 meetings in March and going forward. Oh, we emailed everyone about the Cornell Cooperative Extension. They've got the backyard maple syrup Zoom workshop, but it's been rescheduled for the 23rd of February. And then they also wanted us to mention that there's a garden resources page, which I think is really good. And I'm going to put that in the chat for everyone. And
Wait, so the maple syrup thing's been moved?
Yes,
it's not tomorrow.
it's to Tuesday, February 23rd.
Thank you for telling me.
No, don't worry. That's she told us today to let you guys know. So Michael's letting you know.
I just put the link in the chat to the garden resources for the Cornell Cooperative Extension. I think we were told they updated the page or something. So there's a lot of stuff there. Chad, did you have anything to say about Grow Local Greenwood Lake? Is there?
Hopefully we're still waiting to sign the official lease. I'm getting on their case a little bit, but hopefully we'll be really close and moving ahead. Today, actually, I got a beautiful painting that I'll show you. It's quite amazing from a local artist here, Chris Van Voren. I told him, if you could make a nice little dream picture of the garden, and it's pretty amazing. So I'll send an email and post that because it's really, now I feel like too much pressure. All right, I'll grab it. It's really great. Hold on.
Does anyone else have any final questions for this month's episode of the Zoom Garden Plot?
Thank you, everyone. You're all very inspiring.
Yeah. I appreciate that,
Wow.
Oh, wow.
That's so beautiful.
That is so
Nice.
cool.
And then now I feel pressured. Like I have to make it look this good.
Oh, wow.
Just remember, that's your long-term goal.
Exactly. I'm gonna hide this picture for a few years.
Actually, why don't you take a picture of it and we'll put it in the cover of our PowerPoint file, so we'll see it every week.
He's also got a Facebook page where he's featured it. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, my wife has to take a picture because she's the photographer in the family for the those type photos. So I'll tell her to take a picture. But yeah, otherwise we're very excited, and I was just featured in Dirt Magazine, which was interesting and fun. I was rambling a bit, but she was asking me questions, so I was answering, and it was exciting. So I'm just trying to get the word out, and this is a big part of it. This crew, love you guys, and all about growing food.
What's it like to be famous? I gotta know. You
Oh
gotta.
yeah, well, people are knocking on my door all hours now. It's crazy. Autographs. Well, in famous in my house, the kids were making fun of me. They were like, "What are you talking about?" So,
Oh my God! Well, you should be very proud. It's really cool.
They humbled me quickly. They my daughter and her friend were like reading the article, making fun of me the whole time. But I'm still happy about it.
And so for Sustainable Warwick for March and April, we definitely will be doing a big campaign in those months, telling people, come on, get out there and garden. It's good for you. It's good for the planet. We're going to encourage people to, because there's a new community garden going in. So they're going to need extra hands, almost like a barn raising sort of couple of events going on there. So we're going to try to get people to do that. But, gardening is something that it's a skill that we need in the 21st century. So I really appreciate everyone being here. Beginners asking questions probably are one of the best resources we have here. And then all the people with different kinds of experiences. It's really great having everyone here.
Thank you all.
Thank you. You know what? I just dropped in the messages to everybody. I came across a spring gardening school through Cornell Cooperative Extension. It was for Suffolk County, but it's online, so anybody can do it. I'm thinking about signing up. I think for $75 you get access to every single seminar that they're doing, and there's some really interesting ones that are in play. So I dropped that in the messages. Did you all just see that? No? Yes, maybe.
No, I do not see it. You need to send it again, Nicole.
Yeah, I
Chat.
most certainly will. I know. I'm like, oh, here we go. Chat. I'll put it in right now. Because I sent it directly to Michael. My
Oh, there you
bad. I gotta send it to everyone.
Nicole, I've missed you, man.
I missed you guys too. I missed the last one and I felt like such a boop. All right, there you go.
Spring garden. Okay. All right, then. All right. Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Thank-
Bye-bye.
thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Have a good night. Take care.
Bye.
Night,
Thank-
everyone.
Bye.
We'll see you next month. Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Night.